There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is your mountain.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. This episode, first of all, I'm your host, David Wilms, and I guess I'm bumbling through this a little bit because I'm looking at a screen at my co-hosts rather than sitting around a table with them. We're all, we're all staying in our respective homes and doing the right thing here as this coronavirus makes its way through the United States. So,
yeah, interesting times, isn't it?
Yeah. So you're hearing the voice of Nephi Cole, and I see that you are I think you're in what we would refer to as Studio 1B, where we've recorded on occasion.
That's right.
And I think, Mike, I see you. I think you're in Studio 1A.
That's right. I'm in 1A.
Where we do most of our recording.
The normal humble abode.
Where are you sitting at?
I am sitting in my sunroom because it is the only room in my house that's really cut off from the rest of the house. And my kids are all asleep, and I don't want to wake them up.
Next time, we're going to turn that into a studio. We're going to cover it. You got to have an old mattress around there or something. We can just tape it. We can just put mattresses on the walls and stuff.
But that defeats the point of the sunroom, letting all the light in.
Think about the podcast. Don't be selfish. This is for me. This is not for you.
But I'm sure we can do something here.
Yeah, right.
I'm the only place where Well, I guess we hosted one here at my house once, but it was
that was with Jana Waller.
With Jana Waller sitting in my living room.
Podcast number 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yeah, to your living room. I remember that. Yeah.
And we haven't done one here since. I guess I was a poor host.
Well,
maybe I did it just right.
Yeah. No, those were interesting times. So what have you been doing to waste your time? This is a waste of time, but we've all been sitting around our wonderful home offices.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, so we hear there's just,
I'll tell you.
So I'm bummed today, right? I'm bummed today. And so I need a pick me up, which is why I wanted to have this conversation. Today, as we're recording this, found out that country legend Joe Diffie passed away from coronavirus. And, we're starting to see more people, more familiar faces that are being stricken by this. And it just gets me thinking, there's got to be something positive, that we can take from this. There's got to be something, some kind of a good story that we can talk about. And so really it's, you guys and myself, what have we been doing during our several weeks here, living in isolation that maybe we wouldn't have done before, that it's kind of a good thing.
Well,
you go first.
Yeah. Far more uplifting than mine. Because here's what I did. I cleaned up after hunting season because when I got done with hunting season, I was so busy. I've had a garage full of different seasons. It's like there was one pile that was archery season. And then there was one pile that was early elk. And then there was one pile that was backpacking elk. And there's one pile that was late elk. And so I've just kind of moved all that back into the basement. And then I organized. I have a room where I keep everything it's almost it's your unfinished part of your basement. You have kind of my storage area down there. That's a dedicated, storage area for hunting gear. And so that got uber organized, like Steven Ranella style with cause he has this immaculate garage. And so I wanted to be able to just find everything. And so I made a point of making sure, Dave, you'll think I'm ridiculous for this. I made a point of making sure that for every season that I hunt, I have a separate dry bag with a separate set of gear for really early season, for kind of the regular season, which is kind of your average fall hunting, kind of your mid to late, and then your really cold weather season. So all I have to do is reach up, grab this grab bag, and it's got jacket, insulating layers, it's got everything I need in it. So I don't have to reorganize different sets of gear. I just have the sets of gear ready to go, and a separate set with my overwhites in it for coyote hunting in the winter. Everything lined out. And then the other thing I did was I decided I had this will bore everyone. I had this receiver that I had, which is an AR lower receiver. And I decided it was time to build my first AR pistol. It was for my wife, of course. This is a gift. And so I decided this was a great time of year. I mean, what better opportunity to, this downtime? And, she obviously needed that. And so I got all the parts together and made my order so I can do that. So I had all this, time that I could have,
You're such a good husband.
Well, that's what I try and do. I try, it's not all about me.
I can picture those bins, and knowing
they're dry
you,
bags.
and
They're not just bins; they're dry bags.
Well,
so that way,
but
let's
knowing
say I
you,
had to throw it in the bottom of a canoe in a big hurry. Let's say that there's another 40-day flood. I'm ready to go. I got the canoe in back. It's ready. Throw the dry bag in the canoe. Boom. I even organized all my, and unbelievably, you're not gonna believe this. I don't want, too many people to know how much ammo I have, but let's just say that it's all very neatly organized by the different, guns and priority of gun. And if you only could have one gun to hunt, which gun would it be? But if you could take two, which ones? But now let's say you had a dump truck and you had to put a dump truck full of guns. So I've got it all lined out and prioritized on the wall, so I don't ever have to think about it again. All I have to do is look at the wall, grab a bag.
So that's amazing. Can you come over and do that for mine?
Yes, no, it'll probably take me 15 minutes.
No, yeah, I know. I was gonna say you'd have to multiply my gear by 1,000 times, right?
I was gonna mention. I think Nephi. I'm
5 minutes at your house, we're done.
I'm picturing this dry bag for Nephi, and I'm like, he's gonna need a separate canoe for each dry bag because there's so much gear. And then I'm thinking about mine. I'm like, I'm just gonna need extra masking tape on the same dry bag.
That's right.
It's
you
for
just have an erasable marker.
Gear.
You write
by dry bag, you mean hefty.
Yeah, by dry bag, I mean, and probably generic at that. Maker's Mark, not Maker's Mark. What's Member's Mark? Member's
Mark.
More expensive than I'd buy.
Yeah.
I would like to say
that's awesome.
I did use the help of my two sons, my 6-year-old and my 9-year-old, in all of this planning. So it was some quality father and son's time as well. I only have 2 kids, so I'm not leaving anybody out. That's just my kids. It's like my 2 boys. And so there was like all this discussion. Oh, this is what you use this piece of gear for. This is what you use this piece of gear for. And believe it or not, they're gearheads.
Oh,
I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it. I've seen them.
Like father, like sons.
I know how this works. Yeah. I have 2 daughters, and so we didn't do the gear download because they just were not interested in that. But they've been doing a really good job of we've been going out to dinner, so we've been making dinners from scratch and making a variety of things, and so they're really learning the basic recipes of things in addition to just spending time being kids. There's a little bit of internet going on. There's still some schoolwork going on, but for the most part, we're just playing. It's just one of those times. Well,
you know how I know you're not? Because my wife is good friends with your wife. And so I have seen your wife's Facebook. And so I know what is on the dry erase board of what has to be done at your house.
Structured play. It
is. Yeah. It is. Well, okay. So I've been working from home, and of course, the week that we're going into here for this podcast is spring break, so things will be different, and we're going to have some fun. But I've been working from home, and fortunately, timing-wise, if you can have a fortunate timing piece, my wife's birthday was the beginning of March, and so she wanted a 3-foot by 6-foot glass whiteboard, and it's a fancy whiteboard. I was like, okay, if we're going to put it in the kitchen area, why not? And it worked out perfectly because as soon as the kids' school was out, we were looking up, how to do a structured day so that it wasn't just completely wasted. And we'd have them in the morning working on reading and then writing and math. Most of those things are doing through the school system and just logging in, which is fine. And then in the afternoon, they get to play. They get to call a relative and actually have a phone call and learn how to have a phone interaction rather than text or some of the other stuff that they do. So it's been pretty good to get back to the basics. We are not running off to something at night. We're The house is constantly picked up. We're running the dishwasher. We're doing all of those basic life chore things that you just expected you grew up with in a more simple time. And so we've kind of gotten back to that basics. And then this coming week, we originally were going to be down in Florida, seeing my folks and going to Disney and all that. But instead, we're going to spend some time doing stuff in the fire pit out back. We're going to go do our solitude in the woods tomorrow. So we'll spend some time there, probably roast some marshmallows and do some cookout type thing midday, which you can do in the Rockies on like one day a week. And so we're going to pick that day and get out in the sun and hang out and hike and see the wilderness and just spend as much time as we can, because I have found that every day I need to force my kids outside to go on a walk or do something to kind of, break the monotony, get some exercise, release some stress, get that fresh air going. That's a big component. Dave, what have you been doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, not dissimilar from what either one of you have been doing, except I guess I haven't organized my ammunition and firearms and all that sort of stuff. But,
let's see, '06, and '06.
Right. It's all lined up perfectly.
It's all
12 gauge. Don't forget 12 gauge.
That's right. 12 gauge. Yeah. No, but for me, it's been kind of along the lines of what Mike said about really disconnecting from a lot of things and slowing the pace down and just getting to know my family again and spending some incredible quality time. And in my household growing up, and I'm trying to instill it in my own kids, not only were the outdoors, obviously the outdoors were a huge part of my childhood and a huge part of my kids' childhood, but the other big piece is music. And so we've actually been doing this thing where my oldest daughter, who's 11, she and I record songs together. So we kind of work her music class part, and I'll play guitar and she'll sing. And we'll record these songs, and then she likes to have them posted up on Facebook so that her family and friends and everybody can see it. And the idea is, everybody's Facebook feed is filled with, all this doom and gloom around coronavirus. And she just wanted to provide people a break from that. And so we do that every other day. We post a video with a new song that we've done together. And we post another one today. And my younger daughter, my 8-year-old, joined in and helped with that one. And we're just having a lot of fun hanging out and making music together and playing together and just, rebuilding that bond that kind of gets lost when you're shuffling them to activities all the time and, see them for a couple hours in the evening after school and activities and getting them ready for bed. And it's just kind of nice to be able to have that reconnection family time.
Yeah. That's good. That's a positive thing. So.
Yeah. So, I'm just glad to hear we're all making the best of this situation. And I hope everybody that's listening is doing the same thing, making the best out of this. We know that it's hard for everybody. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about tonight. It's hard for everybody, what's going on, everything being shut down and everybody, the economy really grinding to a halt. But we want to talk about what that means to the hunting and angling community. We keep hearing these conversations about what it's doing. I'll tell you what it means.
It means I don't get to go to. It means I don't get to go to Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous in June.
Yeah, it means Mule Deer Foundation banquets are canceled. It means Pheasants Forever banquets are canceled. It means Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation banquets are canceled. I mean, the point is, there are a lot of these sporting organizations, these hunting organizations, conservation organizations that derive a lot of their revenue, in some cases more than 60% of their revenue, from banquets, from people coming and gathering in these large settings and having dinner and participating in auctions, and
get-togethers.
That revenues, these huge get-togethers that we now can't have because it's unsafe to bring that many people together, right?
Yeah.
And so all of these organizations that depend on this revenue it's the lifeblood of these, of a lot of these organizations. It's drying up. It's not there. So we want to talk about that. That's the first thing. And we'll circle right back to that here in just a second. The other thing we want to talk about is what pieces are in the recently passed stimulus package by Congress that sportsmen and women might find useful, that might help our community. So we want to talk about that a little bit. And then we also, of course, we want to talk about getting out into the great outdoors and how you do that. How to do that and where to do that in this current environment we're in right now. So that's what we want to talk about today. So I guess the first thing is, why should we care? I mentioned 60% of revenues for a lot of these organizations gone because we can't gather anymore. First of all, I'm going to pose the question to you guys. Why should we care about that? Why does that matter? If you're a hunter and angler, why should you care about that?
Well, I mean, that we've already talked about this, but in other podcasts, but most of the money that they're pulling in goes to on the ground conservation efforts that are important, and they give back in a lot of ways that help sort of streamline processes and keep things going to augment what the states and the federal government are doing. So they're identifying key important habitat needs and coalescing a lot of people together and raising funds to make it happen.
And they're identifying access opportunities. We want to get more access to more places. They're identifying those and helping negotiate those deals and helping fund those deals. They're doing land acquisitions. Think about organizations like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, where they've done elk restoration in several states across the state, partnering with state wildlife agencies to help get elk back on the landscape that hadn't been there for generations. Right? And you have groups like Ducks Unlimited that have done, since their founding in 1937, have done more than 20,000 projects across North America and have conserved more than 14 million acres of waterfowl habitat. And we've talked about this in prior podcasts around. We mentioned the study before about bird populations and the massive decline we've seen in bird populations, with a notable exception. Waterfowl populations, waterfowl are at least in my lifetime, in our lifetime here, they're at all-time highs. And the opportunities we have as a result of efforts of organizations like Ducks Unlimited.
Sure wish I had a goose pit.
It's nice, I'll tell you. It's nice to have one.
Yeah.
You should really look into,
or a friend with a goose pit.
You should really look into finding one.
A friend. Yes. No, and in all seriousness, I mean, it's pretty awesome because these organizations, you think about what they do. We've done podcasts with, Mule Deer Foundation. We've got another one coming up. We've done podcasts with, Boone and Crockett Club. These organizations, the money that funds these important things, it doesn't just come out of midair. And so in these times when people are economically strained, it's going to be difficult to continue that commitment to conservation. It's going to take conscious effort, because as anybody who's lived in a foreign country for a while knows, and I would say not a first world foreign country, but a foreign country where you have people that, are worried about where their next meal is going to come from, and are worried about whether or not they're going to have a house, or maybe don't have one. I've lived in one for a couple of years, and you find out that conservation is a luxury that we have in this country, where we have so much, we have more than we need in most cases, and that abundance allows you to conserve. Literally, I mean, that's what it is. You don't have to use everything. You can conserve it. And we take that for granted. And in tough times like this, a lot of people are going to be feeling pinched, and they're going to be wondering what, a lot of things. And it is going to be a gut check for all of us to say, okay, well, am I still willing to make a sacrifice for that? Am I still willing to do more than just talk, but maybe put my sweat equity or my dollars towards something that I'm saying is important. And we take a little bit for granted. And we talked a little bit about, we've always talked about Pittman Robertson Fund, and we talk about license fees, but there's kind of this, it's kind of there's a fine recipe that it takes to do these projects, which it takes a mix of that federal money from Pittman Robertson, which is going to be flush over the next couple of, there's
at least the next year.
Yeah, because we've had a 300% increase in sales of firearms. And this is a great opportunity, I keep saying, to bring new people into the hunting and the shooting sports. We have a very unique opportunity, but we have to sell them licenses too. Those people, there's going to be a slug of people now who are going to want to participate. We have to be mentors. We have to be friends. We have to look at these new gun owners and not just treat them like they're, just shut them in a corner and treat them like they're a unique, zombies created in the pandemic. We need to bring them on board. But the other thing we need to do is make sure that these organizations that plan these things, that collaborate with our state agencies, continue to have funding and continue to have expertise. Because Dave, you've mentioned it, there are some of these organizations, their staff, the expertise that works on wildlife conservation, sometimes that doesn't belong to an agency.
Right. That's exactly right. You have a number of organizations that are, so wildlife agencies can get spread pretty thin. They've got a statutory responsibility to do so much, and their resources are so limited that they depend on the non-government organizations, the hunting and angling groups. They depend on those partnerships, not just for financial resources, but for boots on the ground to help with projects. If it weren't for the boots on the ground by a lot of these organizations, it doesn't matter if the money's there. The project still wouldn't get done. They need the money and they need the people. And the thing about these organizations is, so you go to these banquets and you pay for your table and you buy, raffle tickets, and you do auction. That money's going back for a couple of things. Yeah, a lot of it's going to do on the ground conservation, but some of that on the ground conservation has to be done by real people. Actually, all of it has to be done by real people. And so that money has to help pay those salaries too. Yeah, and if that money's not coming in, then you can't pay those salaries. And it's not just the habitat projects. It's impacting people's lives and livelihoods there.
Yeah, there's no such thing as virtual. Yeah, there's no such thing as virtual conservation.
That's exactly.
Well, you need people, and you need people that can do the job, and that makes it their full-time job, and that costs dollars. If there's certainly a portion of the work that's done through volunteers, and that's a great portion. However, it frankly takes pay. It takes money to run these organizations and get people doing things full time. And that's okay. It's that's just part of the model. And that's the way it's made up. So, the organizations are going to be needing donations probably now more than ever because their fundraising efforts are just they're not able to do them in the same way.
Yeah. Falling into the depths.
They can't even necessarily meet to come up with a way to do a virtual fundraiser. Yeah. And so they're really hampered in how they're going to have to try to react and make up. And so, I think now's the time that if you've got a favorite organization, you really, really consider making that donation.
Yeah. Join. If you're not a member, become a member. If you are a member, make a contribution. If you were planning on going to a banquet, and you've bought that ticket and they offer the refund, don't take the refund. Yeah, consider that a donation. Let them have that, right? Do whatever you can, and it hurts. It's going to hurt, but do whatever you can to help these organizations survive because it benefits all of us in the long run.
Wouldn't it be nice if there were some kind of a vehicle developed that would make it easier to donate?
Wouldn't it? I think you've mastered the segue, Nephi.
I know.
You've just mastered the segue.
It's not just
I'd like to pause for a moment.
It's been a long time, my friend.
We've been waiting for this moment, and I just I'm giving you a small applause here. I would do a slow clap, but I don't know how that would work virtually. But
it's ruined.
Anyway,
there's no segue anymore.
It was a great segue.
You've mastered the destroying the segue.
I did.
Crushing home.
Yeah. I did.
So let's move on to okay. So we've talked about the kind of there's a need there, but You also mentioned in the beginning the federal stimulus package, and I'm sure there's something in there. There's all kinds of little nuggets that we're not even hearing about yet.
Little nuggets?
Yeah.
Little nuggets?
Right. So here's the stimulus package we're talking about.
$2 trillion. I better get more than a little nugget.
Yeah. So that's the stimulus package. Everybody's heard this, $2 trillion, right? The Federal CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, $2 trillion. And a lot of the media reports you've seen about it have really focused on a couple of things, right? It's focused on the big dollar stimulus to corporations, things like, the airline industry and some others in the hospitality industry that are struggling more than anything, right? And other small businesses. And then you hear about the individual stimulus piece, how each taxpayer will be receiving a stimulus check from the federal government to try and encourage putting money back into the economy, or even just allowing people to be able to pay their rent or buy food, that sort of thing. This is a big bill, but there are a couple of pieces in here that aren't getting a lot of publicity that matter for hunters and anglers. And one of them is on this donation front. So, Mike, I know you and I have talked before about how the tax structure works. If you wouldn't mind explaining how before the stimulus package, if somebody wanted to take a tax deduction,
yeah, right. So
for a charitable contribution, how would they go about doing that?
The system has been in place for a while now, and it changed a couple years ago. But it's basically a pretty simple system in that you have your however much income you're making, whatever your sources are, is your gross income, and then you have a tax percentage based upon where you fit within that certain brackets. But that gets adjusted in a variety of ways with deductions and other types of things. To simplify the tax code, they created a standard deduction. So you and me, we our filings, we can just basically take a standard deduction if we meet a certain criteria. Many folks actually itemize, and because they have more donations, they have more things going on that's above and beyond that standard deduction. Well, a couple of years ago, it got doubled. Essentially, went from about for joint filing, husband and wife filing, went from $12,000 to $24,000, and so a lot of people shifted from itemizing to then just taking the standard deduction, because you'd have to donate a lot to charities in order to meet that $24,000, and so it kind of changed the incentive to donate to 501c3s, and so what this particular CARES Act has is an additional incentive for 2020 only, right? And if you're going to donate to a 501c3 charity, you get to take up to $300 deduction on that, on top of your normal standard deduction.
Yeah, and so you can donate to a 501c3
or a C19
or a C19,
which is like a veterans organization, right? So I don't know who all qualifies in that, but it sounds to me like something similar to a Hunting with Heroes type situation. So a veterans organization where they get out and they have some therapy component to it, and service to those veterans.
So basically, if you are looking for an excuse or need a reason, need an excuse, need an incentive, whatever you want to call it, to make a donation to a conservation organization, there couldn't be a better time. Even though it seems like one of the most difficult times, there actually couldn't be a better time, because most of us are not going to itemize our taxes. We're going to take a standard deduction, and we're not going to donate enough in a year to warrant itemizing. So now you have a chance to take your standard deduction and then take an additional deduction for up to $300 more that you contribute to a 501c3. So instead of giving that money to the federal government, you can give that money to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or Mule Deer Foundation or Ducks Unlimited or Pheasants Forever or whomever. So there's now for 2020 only, there's this incentive, and it's it's really a way to try and help these nonprofits survive, make up for this deficit that they're facing right now. So there's a second piece too. Right. So I know a number of our listeners might work for one of these conservation organizations. And there's another piece in the stimulus package that applies to small or mid-sized nonprofits. Now this also applies to businesses, for-profit businesses, but I'm going to focus on the nonprofit piece here. So if you work for a nonprofit organization of 500 employees or fewer, this bill creates a new emergency small business loan program within the Small Business Association's loan program. Now, you have to have existed, the 501c3 has to have existed, or as of March 1st, 2020, have fewer than 500 employees, as I mentioned. Under this, the loans that you get through this SBA program are forgivable. So they turn from a loan into a grant if the nonprofit keeps staff on the payroll between March 1st and June 30th. And so this money can be used for general operating support. It can be used to meet payroll and associated costs like health insurance premiums, it can cover facilities costs, it can cover debt service. I mean, basically, this is a way to help keep the doors open and help keep employees on staff and paid for small nonprofits. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal because there are a lot of small nonprofits out there.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, how many nonprofits have more than 500 employees?
Not many.
Not a lot. Nature Conservancy is one, at least in the conservation world, but not many, right? Just not many. And so this is a big deal. Now, we're not going to dive into the details and go giving any kind of tax advice here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So all we really want to do is point to the fact that it's available. Go look at Section 1106 of the CARES Act, and you can look at the loan forgiveness piece of that. There are a lot of exceptions built in. Like I said, we're not going to go into all the details. We're just pointing you in the direction of the information and just wanted you to be aware that if you work for one of these organizations, there could be a path to
check it out.
That's
the message. Check it out.
Helping survive this tough time. So check it out.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So that gets us to the third thing we wanted to talk about on this episode, and that's getting into the great outdoors. Right? We're all feeling cooped up. Right? We're all feeling there's everybody around the country is going through something, a lot of stress. There's plenty of, it's not just anecdotal, there's published scientific journals that talk about the value of getting outside and what that does for your health and well-being. And so you've seen stay-at-home orders issued by governors, and those governors that have issued these stay-at-home orders, they say, stay at home, except you should go out and recreate outdoors, right? So even these governors that are saying socially distance, small groups, stay 6 feet away from people when you see them, stay at home as often as possible, except to get your essential groceries and pharmaceuticals and apparently beer. But also,
it's funny what things are essential and aren't. And some of them are like, oh, that makes sense. That's in the Constitution. And some of them are like, huh. Who knew?
Right. Somebody told me prohibition lasted for about 2 hours in Colorado before that was fixed. But
yeah. I was talking to somebody that was in line when it came down, and they were like, "Wait, what?"
In any event, it's about getting outdoors.
There's been so just so everybody knows, there's been a great deal of confusion about this too, and so it varies from state to state. Some states have been more effective at pushing out advice on these whether it's been guidance, and depends on the state. Some states you don't have orders. Some states it's just guidance. Some states they have guidance from the governor's office and then goes down, and you've got some county rule or county orders that are in place. And then
or municipal orders.
Or municipal.
Yeah.
Now, if you look, you want to know what's considered essential and what is not. There's actually a document out there. It's by an agency, CISA, which is the Cyber Infrastructure and Security something, CISA. But anyway, you can go look at what the federal guidelines are about what's essential and what's non-essential. And this is a really difficult thing, so we won't get into the details of that because it's tough. But know that there are rules, and you probably want to be aware of them depending on what state you live in. Make sure that you're in line with those rules, because even if you're not breaking the law, you don't want to run into a sheriff's deputy someplace or just an angry mom someplace who says, "What the heck are you doing out?" You want to be able to say, like, "Look, this is what the rule is. We're good. Stay 6 feet away from me."
Yeah, and then
if you're listening to this podcast, your natural proclivity is going to be to go outside and be in the outdoors. It's not going to be to go to a coffee shop, right? Your go-to is outdoors, recreation.
And if you're within 6 feet of somebody, something went horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah. That's a social situation right there. So on the outdoor recreation side, I mean, what's a good way to get out there and get going on that? How can the average person figure it out? There's a lot of different things at a variety of levels.
Yeah. The first thing is just remember that it's okay to go outside and you should be encouraged to go do things outside, but recognize that things are different, at least temporarily. And there might be things that you could do 3 weeks ago that you can't do now, from the federal level all the way down to the local level. So things like if you want to go to your local national park, check with the National Park Service webpage every day, because they're updating that on a daily basis. A number of parks around the country have closed. A number of national monuments have closed. National historic sites have closed. Some are still open. And so you need to know which ones are open, and if there are restrictions on places you can recreate in the ones that are still open, you need to know that. So check that. Same thing with BLM and Forest Service. Look at the, call up your local, your regional Forest Service or regional BLM office, where you want to go, and find out, are there any closures in the area? Because some of the campgrounds might be closed. Some of the more popular trailheads might be closed, but it doesn't mean that there aren't millions of acres, as we say at the beginning of this podcast, millions of acres of opportunity out there. There still are. Right?
Yeah.
And then go down to the state level. You need to look at your state parks. Some states have closed state parks. Some states haven't. Some states have closed some and not all. There might be restrictions on type of use or type of activities within state parks. So check your state park office. Check your state lands office, because there might be restrictions. Some states allow camping on state lands. Some states don't. Some states that may allow camping might not now. For the time being. So you need to check at basically any place you might want to recreate. You need to check and see what kind of restrictions there might be. And then there's the final piece is, if you hunt or fish, what is on these lands?
Well, it depends. And that's the take home answer, is it depends. There's some states that's one of those things is kosher and one is not. There's some states that both are kosher. There's some that both are not, which kind of seems silly, that you'd think, well, like fishing, really? But
yeah, I'm going to call out Washington State in particular, because Washington State, and they're really the epicenter for the coronavirus outbreak in the United States. I mean, that's where a lot of our first cases were. They have a lot of cases, but in Washington State, effective in late March, and it's not right now. I think it goes through, I'm trying to remember, I think it goes through April 6th or 8th. You'll have to check their website. But recreational fishing is prohibited in the state of Washington right now. If you can believe that, recreational fishing is prohibited.
I have a hard time believing that. I mean, I understand if they're the epicenter and they've been through more than anything that my local community has been through. So I'm going to give them some grace there on the decision they made. But I have a hard time believing that is something that really needs to be cracked down on, because frankly, if I'm fishing with more than one other person, or if I see one other person besides myself and my buddy when I'm fishing, I'm kind of mad. So it's not a group activity where I come from. So I don't understand that, but I'm sure they have a reason.
I'm sure they do too. I haven't dived into it. I just have a friend sent me their press release, and other things in Washington. Like if you like razor clamming, like if you do razor clam digs, that's been canceled.
Devil's advocate there for you. My God, I mean, we said like there's a reason, but do remember also sometimes they may just make mistakes. Denver is a great example where after 2 hours after they told everybody they couldn't go buy a beer, they figured out, they're like, whoops, made a mistake there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes and that's something that everybody needs to remember in this entire situation. We're all human.
So you're saying that the people that like to drink had a louder voice than the sportsmen in Washington. Stepping up and saying, "Oh no, it does." Sometimes having a big voice and explaining your side of things makes an impact.
Sometimes just reaching out and touching somebody and letting them understand the issues it does make a big difference.
Yeah,
and that's why in some states, specifically, Minnesota specifically said, hunting is, get out and hunt. And so, it varies by state, and that's a challenge.
Well, so I'm not going to sit here and judge any state for the actions that they take. Every state is different, and the response and what they're trying to do is different. All we really want to do here is say, heads up, if you hunt or fish, just make sure you check with the state wildlife agency before you go out to make sure that you're not going to find yourself in trouble.
Have a plan. I think now more than ever, have a plan. Know where you're going to go. Know what you're going to do. Look it up ahead of time to make sure that that's okay. And then know that you're going to probably have to be more self-sufficient when you go out. The facilities will probably be closed. There may not be water. There may not be toilets available and things like that. So have a plan. Be safe. And just double check things before you go.
Yeah, and for everybody that's about to get mad at us for saying, for buying into the conspiracy, or buying into like being worried about this thing, hey, remember, there are a lot of people that are worried about this thing, and it is a big deal. And whether or not, it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. This is something that we have. I mean, this is a social thing now where we have to be sensitive to everybody that's around us. And I think more than anything else, that's what this is hopefully going to teach all of us. We're all in this together. Like it or not right now, we're all in it together. And there's no way of undoing that. There's no way of the only thing that, would be poor that we could do is to not do that, is to ruin the collective effort that everybody's making by callous action. So, hey, yes, this sucks. Get on board.
Yeah, here's my hope. This very well could be the one of or the most difficult thing that many of us have to go through in our lifetimes from a social and a economic standpoint. We hope, right? This very well could be. And my hope is that we come out on the backside of this, stronger and better prepared to combat something like this if it were to ever happen again, and that we have more empathy and sympathy for our fellow man and everything that people have to go through on a day-to-day basis. I really do. I hope we can make a positive out of this and be better off as a society as a result.
Totally agree.
And I also hope that while we're trying to get through this collectively, all together here, that we can all go out and recreate separately, far away from each other.
Yes, exactly. Especially if I'm fishing.
I know that's what you're trying to do tomorrow, Mike. I did that with my kids last weekend. I'm sure, Nephi, you've got plans in the work to do something similar.
Yeah, I got a lot of gear I gotta use.
That's right.
Gear's not gonna wear it. So that jacket's not going to wear itself.
No.
Yeah. So, let me leave it with this. This podcast is very different. This episode's very different from the type of episode that we do, but this is a different time we're in. We're going to get back into a more normal cycle with our next episode and moving forward, but we felt like it was important to touch on this here. Right. we just thank everybody, right? Everybody for listening. Thank you. Thank you for being such great human beings. I mean, we get such great feedback from all of you through emails and social media, and we really appreciate it. We wish you all safety and health as we work through all of this, and hope that we can share experiences together here for a long time to come. Anybody else? Either of you have any other thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
No, I think that covers it for me.
Absolutely. No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, get outside, enjoy the great outdoors, and remember, as always, that life is about experiences. So go have one.
You're never going to believe this, but I didn't record any of that.
I'm going to hate you so much if that's the case.
I'm just kidding.